Hi there, welcome to this month's Patreon review request and counter recommendation video. I say this month's, let's just call it the most recent. The scheduling hasn't been terribly consistent on this lately, so let's try to make this good enough for 2 months worth of review requests and counter recommendations. Let's get started. There will be animal random number generation later, so stay tuned for that. But the way this works, by the way, in case you're new, if you support me at Patreon, my Patreon campaign at patreon.com/TomChick, for $10 or more, once a month-ish, you'll get a message from me saying, hey, what's something that you'd like me to review? Anything. A book, a game, a movie, a TV show, a restaurant. We have other weird things in here as well that don't even fall into those categories. You send me back your review request, and then I will have a counter recommendation. Understanding that some of these aren't necessarily recommendations, but my counter is a somewhat related recommendation, usually in earnest. So let's get started. Our first request is from Craig M., who requests The First Martians, a board game, and he says, I know you have access to a copy, which I do because he kindly gifted to a mutual friend of ours a copy of it. Craig, okay, my counter recommendation, Craig, is a survival game by the same fella that he did a few years ago called Robinson Crusoe. First Martians is a scientists on Mars survival game. Robinson Crusoe is, as you can imagine, folks on a tropical island survival game. Robinson Crusoe had serious issues when it came out. I was pretty critical of it. It has since gotten a second edition, and I understand some of those issues have been addressed. So, Craig, there you go, my counter recommendation. Oh, by the way, I have an espresso because it's a little too early in the day for a beer. Alex Chapman says, Tom, I always try and think of things that you might enjoy, and Alex, you do a heck of a job. I remember really enjoying the book Hyperion by Dan Simmons, so I will choose that. I hope Honey the dog picks me, he says. That's a spoiler, Alex Chapman. The dog's use as a random number generator. He says, do I need to order dog treats from Amazon to sway the vote? Stand by. Alex, my only exposure to Dan Simmons is reading The Terror, which I didn't care for. However, and this is my counter recommendation, the series on AMC, a lot of the things that didn't work about the book for me are kind of spectacular in the series. And furthermore, in the book, whereas it was kind of glutted with a cast of English sailors, the cast in The Terror on AMC is amazing. I love those guys. There's a couple of new actors I've never seen before, a lot of solid, good stage actors. And I'm going to go on record right now and say that I want to go on an exploration expedition with Jared Harris as my captain, based on watching The Terror. I don't care if we're stranded in the Arctic for 3 years, just that guy as a captain, as a sort of a father figure, he's fantastic in The Terror. So Alex Chapman, my counter recommendation, a TV show. Dave Sell, all right, bonus here because I listened to the Taken Guy on the Train podcast, and by Taken Guy on the Train, he means the movie The Commuter. Dave continues and says, it reminded me of this train wreck movie that actually uses 100,000 as motivation at one point. I'm assuming Dave means dollars. Could be pesos, don't know. So he says, I will select the new Van Damme classic, Wrong Side of Town. Okay. Dave, I was never a Jean-Claude Van Damme kind of guy. I think you can break people down. You know, there's 3-4 kinds of people in the world. There's the Jean-Claude Van Damme folks. There are the Sylvester Stallone folks. Tend to be Trump voters. I don't want to get political, sorry. And then there are guys like me, the Dolph Lundgren folks. Dolph Lundgren is doing a great job of holding up. The guy looks amazing. He's got a great sense of humor, which Van Damme does too as well, to be fair. So my counter recommendation, Dave. Dolph Lundgren was recently in a movie called Altitude, where I think he's the villain. Denise Richards is a federal air marshal with a haunted past. and she is so terrible in it. It is a thing to behold. So the movie Altitude with Dolph Lundgren. And unfortunately, he's second fiddle to Denise Richards. It's a little bit too much Denise Richards, not quite enough Dolph Lundgren, but there's my counter recommendation. Patrick Mullen. He says Lost Planet 2, which I had counter-recommended to him last month. He says it's not available for the Xbox One. Do I have any other ungracefully excellent games I would recommend? That was a term I used last month in the video about Lost Planet 2. He says other examples of graceful excellence, and he lists games like the Knights of the Old Republic, Morrowind, Bioshock, maybe Red Dead Redemption. He says graceful games. So here's me and Patrick talking about graceful games. And these are good examples, Patrick. The whole idea about ungraceful excellence, it's a bit of an oxymoron. So other than Lost Planet, I would have a hard time coming up with many things that fit. I would have to give it more thought. But let's go on to your review recommendation. Let me give you a counter, your review request, and I'll give you a counter recommendation. He says, and Patrick is bound and determined to get me to play some boring, nerdy man, hex-based war game. Because he says, my review request is the Operational Art of War 4. There's 4 of these. It actually is a venerable series. It's been around for a while, and if you like operational, if you know enough to know what operational scale means, I think you would enjoy the Operational Art of War series. So that's his request. My counter recommendation, Patrick, there's a series of games by Signal Studios called Toy Soldiers. There is a Cold War version of Toy Soldiers that I think would appeal to a history buff / nerd like yourself and me. So there's my counter recommendation. Toy Soldiers, the Cold War version. And I'm not being completely facetious. I think as far as a tower defense in which you are in a first person, a down-in tower defense game with a first-person perspective, the Toy Soldiers games are great. And the Cold War is a pinnacle of the series. Oh, this is my cheat sheet for later. Don't look at it yet. Clay Heaton. By the way, Clay, thank you so much for the recommendation, or actually the review request of the best we could do. This is lovely. I love how it spans generations and countries. So, yeah, I might write this up anyway. Thank you, Clay. It's a lovely piece of work. She's amazing. So this month, Clay says, can we get one of Firebird's? Oh, he wants to get one of our friend Alexandra's birds to be the random number generator. Clay, interesting idea for the future. I will bank that idea. We'll see. But he says, my request is for 1 hour, 1 life. And he gives me an URL here to go there. And I went there, and it's I guess, kind of a family survival game, I believe. Okay, Clay, my counter recommendation, I recently was thrilled to receive a press copy of a game called Dead in Vinland, in which Vikings fight zombies, right? I mean, obviously, if it's called Dead in Vinland, that's what it's about, except it's not. It's about a Viking family surviving. So there's my counter recommendation. Dead in Vinland, a survival game based on a family of Vikings. And they're a little bit of a precious family. There's the annoying sister-in-law, there's the sassy daughter, the beleaguered father. So the folks that did it did a game called Dead in Bermuda, which I believe was about a plane crash in Bermuda. If you're going to be in a plane crash, that's a great place to wash up on a tropical island. And they have to survive. So this is the historical version of that, which actually I'm curious to spend some time with. All right, thank you, Clay Heaton. 1 hour, 1 life. Sean K. Mannion, how about Impulse by Carl Chudik? I love Carl Chudik's games, and Impulse might be the only one I've never played. Well, Sean, I've played Impulse. I actually grabbed this. When did I grab this? I think I was just looking for 4X space games. And I love what Carl did with the idea, Carl, because we're on a first name basis. I love what Carl Chudik did with the idea of the sweep of history as seen through technological development in the game innovation. And there's some similar things with the way he uses cards, where a card can have multiple uses and any given card can dramatically change the rules of the game. Impulse does something similar. There are some really, Impulse is, it's kind of hard to learn, it's hard to teach. There's some very unconventional things with the way it works. Carl Chudik, of course, so you could imagine. But I really like what he's done with this, and I'm a little bit surprised it's not better known. Maybe because it is esoteric. So, Sean, there you go. My counter recommendation, although I think I do recommend this. My counter recommendation, have you seen Tiny Epic Galaxies? The Tiny Epic series can be hit or miss. Some of them feel a little bit too frivolous. Tiny Epic Galaxies is pretty cool. If you have and there's an expansion that I think adds like Death Star kind of weapons. I think you kind of need that. But there's my counter recommendation. As far as the Tiny Epic series goes, I like Tiny Epic Galaxies. Bogey says, nothing creative this time, but damn it, Tom, watch Firefly already. Okay, I mean, it's like a space TV show, right? Firefly? People fly around in space and they fight crime or solve moral dilemmas. They wonder if they should violate the first directive, all of that stuff. Firefly? I mean, I know it's the guy who did the Avengers, and that Buffy show, but it's probably before he really knew what he was doing, right? Okay, Firefly. Oh, the other thing I know about Firefly, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this fellow named Nathan Fillion. He's a funny guy. He's in that Firefly show. So my counter recommendation, Bogey, in Gat Out of Hell, which is a standalone DLC for Saints Row 4, where you go into hell and you do missions for the devil, and it's like a whole different area. It's a mini city. The voice of God, this might be a spoiler, God appears in the game, Nathan Fillion. There's my counter recommendation, Gat Out of Hell. Randy Pinion, I think Randy doesn't realize that he already won, because he gave me a repeat request for, oh shoot, I got the wrong book. Well, at any rate, Dead House Gates by this Steven Erikson fellow, who's not Neil Stevenson, in case you're wondering, because I was confused about that. Randy says, read this first to get some context for Dead House Gates, and then review Dead House Gates. So I read this, and I think I kind of blew a fuse. I'm in a little bit of an overload with turgid fantasy at this point. But at any rate, Randy, you've already won. So Randy, if you win again, you know what? I'll just throw in a write-up of this. I do love like these kinds of books. I think I might have showed you guys this before, like all these maps in the front. Like, yeah, look at this. What's happening there? Ooh, what is this place? Why is that labeled? And then this, by the way, this Dramatis Persona, these are spoilers, because it lists people's names and who they are, but then you're introduced to them in the book, and you're not supposed to know that stuff yet. So don't read the Dramatis Persona if you're going to read that book. So Randy, my counter recommendation to Dead House Gates. Let me just... So this was won by one of my Patreon supporters. It'll be in the mail tomorrow. Hexplore It. Get the glare off of it there. It's a board game that reminds me a lot of tabletop RPGing, which I know you like, Randy, for its kind of loosey-goosiness with the rules, and it's all about writing on character sheets. It's very tactile that way. Dice throwing. Randy, even if you're not into board games and you're more of a tabletop RPG guy, I think Hexplore It has a certain amount of appeal for folks like you. Andrew Stanko, and I think Andrew won this copy, so this will be in the mail to you tomorrow, Andrew. Andrew says, I'm happy to report that Adam, my little brother from last month's review request, is a huge fan of the podcast, even though I forgot to mention Adam's name. So we now know Andrew's brother is Adam. For this month, could you please review the book My Girlfriend Anna, he says he won't make the same mistake of leaving the name out twice. Will you please review the book my girlfriend Anna gave me for Valentine's Day, The Truth About the Harry Kubert Affair? Don't know what that is, but okay. And it makes me think I never understood Kubert. What's worse? I don't know if Pac-Man or Kubert would be worse. Would hell be being stranded on a desert island with only a Pac-Man machine or only a Kubert machine? Oh, I shudder to think of that dilemma. Andrew, my counter recommendation, I was a Space Invaders guy way back when. There's a series of games called Space Invaders Extreme, which is kind of a nostalgia update with fancy graphics, and it's super splashy. I say fancy graphics, they still use that retro look, but way splashier. It's an update of Space Invaders. And there's a cool scoring mechanism, like if you like the scoring tricks in pinball, if you like the high score chase, I think Space Invaders Extreme is the appeal there. Andrew, I don't even know if you were ever into Q*bert. I doubt this book is about Q*bert, but forget that Q*bert guy, Space Invaders Extreme. Andrew Shee, thanks for showing off your radiation therapy beard line, which I've still got here. He says he's disappointed we couldn't see the tattoo. No, Andrew, you don't want to see my stupid tattoo. Did I even tell you what it is? It's a rose with blood dripping off of it, but no one ever sees the blood drip. They're like, oh, you got a rose, how cute. And I'm like, no, it's edgy. It's dark, because there's a drop of blood. When I went and got it, did I tell you guys this last month? When I went and got it, you flip through the book, you pick, oh, I want that tattoo. It was a tattoo of a rose with a dewdrop coming off of it. And I was like, yeah, I want that, but make the dewdrop red, like it's blood. Yeah, and it just looks like a dumb flower. Anyway, Andrew says, I'll nominate Working by Studs Terkel, the legendary Chicago writer. It's an oral history of Americans from all walks of life talking about their jobs. It was published in the mid-70s and is a fascinating window into American society at the time. For extra credit, you could also check out Gig by a few people who aren't Studs Terkel. It's essentially the same book, regular people talking about their working lives, but published in 2000. So it captures a very different moment in the American economy and society. Andrew, I've never read any Studs Terkel, so I love this recommendation. And I'm going to kind of cheat, Andrew, because I feel strongly about this one. I have one heck of a counter recommendation for you, but I'm going to pile it on to another counter recommendation because I feel it's relevant to both. So it's the opposite of a 2-for-1. It's a half-for-1. You know what? But I feel doubly strong about it, so it counts as a full recommendation for each review request. So stand by, Andrew. When we get to Sam in a couple of moments, I'll give you your counter recommendation. Jarmo Petiaho says, is it Jarmo or Yarmo? I apologize. Says the nonfiction book In Pursuit by Johan Kylander. If you're currently or have ever been interested in online dogfighting, this book is a great resource. It's an instructive and readable collection of techniques to use to virtually shoot them down before they do it to you. The treatises on this subject are often dry and hard to follow. Not so here. Come to think of it, it's funny but probably true that the virtual air warriors can have more combat hours to their name than current actual pilots, as its accumulation is not limited by taxpayer money, conflict length, or dying. Virtual air warriors can have many more opportunities for sharpening their tactics. Johan Kylander had and did and shared the results. So Yarmo, I got this review request and was like, I think I have that book. But I didn't remember it being about dogfighting. So I went and grabbed the copy of the book off of my shelf and realized it's not In Pursuit. What I have is just Pursuit, which is about running the Bismarck down. Not this. It's a very, very different terrain than dogfighting. All right, Yarmo, my counter recommendation. I was, as a kid, grew up building models of World War II aircraft. You know, some people were into models of tanks and APCs and whatnot. Some people were into models of cars. Never understood that. For me, World War II aircraft are nothing. Even modern jets, whatever. World War II aircraft. And I was saying, where did that come from? So here's my counter recommendation, Yarmo. I don't know. I know you're Scandinavian. I don't know if this was ever available there. I kind of doubt it. I can't imagine it would have much appeal. But there was a show in the 70s called Baba Black Sheep. And I imagine it's terrible, like if you were to watch it now. But for whatever reason, I don't know if my interest in World War II aircraft predated that or is a result of that. But whatever the case, it fed into that. It's of a piece with that. And Baba Black Sheep is about a guy named Pappy Boyington who flew with pilots in China. And his squadron was called the Black Sheep Squadron. And the thing I remember most about it, I think Robert Wagner played Pappy Boyington. The thing I remember most about it is I came away from that show, like what the star of that show was an aircraft called the Vought 4FU, F4U Corsair. And the Corsair is a distinctive aircraft for its gull wing configuration. You know, here's the fuselage, and the wings come down like this and then go out. They're kind of at an angle. And it's a distinctive part of the Corsair. The Corsair has a few distinctive features. It also has this huge honking engine in the front of it. And in order to get the most out of the engine, it's got a big old propeller on the front of it. And it creates a lot of torque. It would infamously pull to one side because of the torque from this huge engine and this huge propeller. But what I remember most is these gull wings. And it was only later that I found out why those gull wings are there. And they're there because of the huge propeller. If you tilt it forward, the propeller was so big that it would scrape the ground. So they had to raise it up off of the ground to keep the propeller, so the propeller would clear. It's one of these design solutions, an engineering solution. And rather than make the landing gear longer, which I think would have been a weak point, and I think there were issues too with it retracting into the wing, they had to bring the wings down a little bit so that the landing gear could extend from the wings and hit the ground and hold the fuselage up high enough so the propeller would clear the ground. But it's just one of those engineering conundrums that it just seems like, well, why not? I guess they would have to back up several steps to give it a smaller propeller, because then you wouldn't take advantage of the larger engine, and it has an infamously long nose that was hard to see over with the way the plane was angled. So it's just an example of engineers at work solving problems as they arise, and the gull wings come from that. So there you go. There's my counter recommendation, Yarmo. Colton West, it's a terrible TV show, I'm sure, but those Corsairs, they're beautiful. The F4U Corsair is just a lovely airplane. Not as lovely as the A-10 Warthog, I have to say. We'll get into that another time. Colton Westrate, he says he listens to the Game Podcast. He says, seriously, you still haven't watched Firefly? Question mark, question mark, question mark. I'm going to have to bribe your dog to pick it this month. All right, don't try to bribe the dog, you guys. She's super susceptible to that. So dog bribery off the table. Colton, my counter recommendation. So in this Firefly, this TV show, there's a lovely young woman named Jewel State. I think she plays Cassie. Cassie repairs the Colonial Vipers in Firefly, right? Like she's a repair woman. So anyway, Cassie is played by Jewel State. I know Jewel State from a movie. And Colton Westrate, you have to watch this now. If I have to watch Firefly at some point, I'm sure it's great, you know. If I have to watch Firefly, Colton Westrate, here's a movie. I know Jewel State, not from Firefly, where she plays Cassie, who repairs the Colonial Vipers. I know her from I think she's Canadian, a Canadian sex comedy called How to Plan an Orgy in a Small Town. That is an actual thing. And the title is what it is actually about. And it is horrible. So Colton Westrate, have fun watching that. Jewel State's lovely. 13, Sam Spackman. All right, so this gets back to the Studs Terkel recommendation from Andrew Shee. Sam Spackman says memoranda, the game, not the plural noun, he specifies. I looked this up, and the fascinating thing about memoranda is it's a game based, it looks like an adventure game, I think. Not based on, but it says inspired by the works of Haruki Murakami, who is a Japanese novelist. And my counter recommendation, and this goes for you, Sam, and for Andrew, because the approach in this book reminds me of what Andrew was talking about with Studs Terkel and with the book Gig. And I think it is, I mean, I've only read a couple of Murakami novels, and I kind of don't understand them, but I do understand this. I think this has universal appeal, and it has special relevance because of what's happened since it was written. So in 1995, a doomsday cult sent, I think like 5 of their members, well, there were 5 different instances, I believe. They sent their members into the subway in Tokyo with plastic bags full of sarin gas. And they carried umbrellas with the tips sharpened, and they would put the bag of sarin gas under the seat, and they used the umbrellas to poke the plastic to penetrate the bag and release the sarin gas into the subway, the crowded subway, and they left. So it was a sarin attack on the subway system in Tokyo in '95, and sarin is incredibly lethal. You can imagine the impact it had, and it was kind of a Tokyo's 9/11 before our 9/11. So Murakami wrote, and this book came out I think in 2000, a book called Underground: The Tokyo Gas Attack and the Japanese Psyche. And what this is it's not about the attack per se. It's not about the people who perpetrated the attack, because that's, according to Murakami, one of the less interesting facets of this. It's about the people who survived the attack and the aftermath of it, and how it folded into their regular day-to-day lives, and hence the part about a look at the Japanese psyche. At any rate, it's fascinating. He sat down with people and just talked to them for hours, and then from the transcripts wrote chapters about specific people who were exposed to the gas on the subway. So there's my counter recommendation. Sam, as far as Murakami, it's not a fictional novel, and as far as Studs Terkel's look at the lives of Americans in the 70s, I think a look at the lives of the Japanese in the 90s, Underground is great. So I heartily counter-recommend Underground to Andrew Shee and Sam Spackman. On a lighter note, Rich Romano. Ryan Reynolds, Samuel Jackson, Gary Oldman, and Salma Hayek in one movie. The Hitman's Bodyguard. How can you not watch it? Yeah, Rich, I've watched it. Okay, Rich. Okay, if that's the kind of thing you're into, Rich, I recommend... where are these notes I wrote? Oh, yeah, okay. The guy. So a guy named Joe Lynch, his most recent movie is it's called Mayhem, which I don't care for. It has the guy who played Glenn in Walking Dead. Very spirited young actress named Samara Weaving, who's Hugo Weaving's niece, I think. Mayhem's not very good. Before Mayhem, I think his first movie was called Knights of Badassdom, and its main claim to fame was it had Peter Dinklage in it, and it was about live action role playing. I don't care for that. But Joe Lynch did a movie with Salma Hayek, which I really like a lot, and which, Rich, I counter-recommend to you, called Everly. And Everly is a combination between an action movie and a stage play. There you go. Soren Hoagland. So I'm voting for a game with 2 intimate open worlds, lovingly recreated in exquisite period detail. A game that effortlessly weaves from comedy to pathos, centered around 2 of the finest gaming protagonists ever, in a heart-wrenching tale of doing the right thing in the face of adversity. And doing the right thing, Soren writes, frequently means repeatedly slamming a bike into some hoodlum's face. It's Yakuza 0, Soren says. Man, you guys with your Yakuza. Okay. And there's a 6 coming out, right? Shouldn't I just jump to 6? Isn't the most recent one the best one? Soren, I don't know if you've played this. I don't know if whatever Scandinavian sensibilities you have that make you lean towards the Yakuza games would enjoy this. But when you talk about lovingly recreated open worlds, 2 of the finest gaming protagonists ever, I can't help but think, you've played Grand Theft Auto 5, right? So there's my counter recommendation. If you watch Walking Dead like me, first of all, my condolences. Second of all, I wonder how it would impact going back and playing GTA 5. Because the actor who plays Trevor Phillips is Stephen Ogg, and he has a recurring part on Walking Dead, and I wonder if me listening to him in Grand Theft Auto 5 would be tainted by me suffering through the latest seasons, plural, of Walking Dead. I don't know. Like, would I be playing GTA 5 and just seeing his character Simon in Walking Dead in my head and thinking, oh God, Walking Dead is so terrible? Would it be distracting? All right, so Soren, you've played GTA 5, right? I think GTA 5 is a masterpiece. Andrew Niller, I'd like you to review The Hobbit. But then he specifies it's a restaurant in Orange County. He says, if this wins the drawing, I'll donate the money for the bill, not including wine, to your PayPal account. All right, first of all, Andrew, that's not how this works. Offer rejected. I'm happy to pay for my own meal. And Andrew, you support me through Patreon. That's plenty. So here's the deal. The Hobbit, I looked it up, and it looks pretty intriguing. It's a restaurant where you just pay an upfront fee, and you go in, and there's a dress code and everything, and it's kind of fancy, and you're served courses. It looks really cool. However, nowhere on the website could I figure out why it's called The Hobbit. And is this with the blessing of the Tolkien estate? So, okay, Andrew, The Hobbit. Here's my counter recommendation. If we're talking about culinary delights, I recently discovered, so Girl Scout cookies, right? They're kind of seasonal. See this? These are just some crappy little cheap-ass Keebler cookies called Coconut Dream. You know what these are? They're those samosa. This is samosa cookies. They're Girl Scout cookies. They're like fake off-brand Girl Scout cookies, but they taste the same. What the heck? How can the stupid elves do that? The elves are ripping off the Girl Scouts. But the cookies are really good, though, by the way. So there's my counter recommendation, Andrew. And it's cheaper than going to The Hobbit. Trevor Apple says, how about the game Butterfly Soup? And he doesn't elaborate, so I had to look it up. Butterfly Soup is, quote, gay Asian girls playing baseball and falling in love. Okay, that's subject material you don't see very often. Intriguing, Trevor Apple. Trevor Apple, my counter recommendation, I had to verify, there's a couple of brothers out of Texas who make indie movies, the Zellner brothers, and I've recommended one of their movies called Goliath previously. I'm trying to avoid repeat recommendations. So this is another one of their movies, and I guess I just keyed in on the idea of Asian girls. A Zellner brothers movie called Kumiko the Treasure Hunter, with Rinko Kikuchi. And it's heartbreaking. I cannot watch this movie. Rinko Kikuchi is so good in it. The Zellner brothers have just their sense of humor and the pathos, and it's just a really affecting, beautiful movie, and it's weird. So Kumiko the Treasure Hunter. You know what it is? It's Japan meets the Coen brothers, meets the Zellner brothers, meets existential despair. How's that for an explanation? So there you go, Trevor Apple, my counter recommendation. Chris Markinson, let's go back to Electra Assassin. Yeah. Let's show you a frame out of here. They're not frames. What do you call panels? Oh man, I just love the artwork. Oh, okay. So here's I'm not going to show you that one. Yeah, just look at this. Look at that. Like, who wouldn't want that, like, hanging up on your office wall? All right, so Electra Assassin, Chris Markinson, he says, I like when you give me a recommendation that doesn't have to do with my vote, just something that you think I would like. All right, Markinson, this is going to be old news since you've heard me talk about it on the movie podcast, but I can't get this movie out of my head. A movie called Thelma by Jacob Trier. Markinson, just see Thelma. That's all I have to say. All right, Tom Ross. I request a review of Noah Hawley's novel, Before the Fall. I know absolutely nothing about this book, but I have enjoyed the show Fargo a great deal, specifically the second season, Tom says, which Hawley created and wrote. So I started on the third season of Fargo, which has Ewan McGregor doing two separate roles. It seems like a casting stunt. And when David Thewlis showed up, I certainly sat up and paid attention, but I don't think he's in it as much as I'd like him to be. At any rate, I kind of bailed on the first episode of that. I liked the first season of Fargo, but I'm with you, Tom. The second season of Fargo is pretty amazing. And I love the bookends, the inciting event, and how it returns in the, I think, next to last episode. And it reminds me of what is occasionally, if you ask me on any given day, my favorite Coen Brothers movie. It can vary from day to day. Today it's got to be Big Lebowski, I think. But on some days it is The Man Who Wasn't There. And I think that Noah Hawley took his cue from something that happened in The Man Who Wasn't There for the inciting event and the resolution of the second season of Fargo. So there's my counter recommendation. Tom, I'm sure you've seen it, but it just reminds me of the second season of Fargo. So, all right, I didn't know that Noah Hawley was a novelist, but that explains a lot about why Fargo works when it works. Lucas Necessary, my new girlfriend likes the TV show Friends, which she recently subjected me to. It's horrible, just the worst. I'm reading this thinking, oh God, is he going to ask me to watch Friends? As such, I'm requesting that you review Fawlty Towers, which is as good as Friends is bad, but also starts with the letter F. All right. Oh, and he says, you don't have to watch all the episodes of Fawlty Towers, or even more than one, but please at least support me in my belief that Friends should be purged from American history. I actually don't know Friends at all, Lucas. So when I moved to LA and was doing the silly actor thing for a while, the first gig that I got here in Los Angeles was a TV show. It was a pilot. I don't think it was ever picked up, in which Henry Winkler plays a right-wing radio talk show host, like a Rush Limbaugh type guy. And I had just one little, like a line on it, like a little tiny appearance on it, where I'm meeting Henry Winkler's son. And I'm supposed to be like some conservative schoolmate of his, and I shake his hand and say, hey, how are you doing? Blah, 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 and we talk a little bit. So this was a pilot way back when. It didn't get picked up. It didn't go anywhere. Henry Winkler went on to be great in Arrested Development. The guy who was playing his son, and there's a scene of me meeting this guy and shaking his hand, the tall young fella named David Schwimmer. And this predated Friends. So when you put together a demo reel of your appearances in film and TV, it's just little short clips of things that you've done. And it's little bits of you delivering dialogue so that agents and casting directors and whatnot can look at it and get a sense for what you're like on film. So in my demo reel is a scene where I'm shaking hands with David Schwimmer and talking to him, and it looks like I'm on Friends, because shortly thereafter David Schwimmer would be on Friends, and I was okay with that. It was a little bit of a mild deception, but that's okay. So I'm wondering if that ever helped me. Is people seeing that demo reel and say, oh, this guy got on Friends. I don't know Friends, and I support you, Lucas, in guessing that it's probably awful. Okay, so here's my counter recommendation. Lucas, let's call you David Schwimmer. Lucas, if you like Fawlty Towers, you've got to know I'm Alan Partridge, where Steve Coogan got his start, right? I love that series. Hey, it's Dingus. No, you come here. All right, Dingus, come here. You've got to read one of these. So there's my counter recommendation. I'm Alan Partridge. Dingus, this is Greg. I think you've met Greg. Read his recommendation here, number 21. And you read it into the camera.
I have to actually look there and look at this?
You have to do both. It's like pretend you're like a newscaster. It's a skill you have to develop.
Gregory. No, he's yelling. Do I have to yell?
No, don't yell. Don't yell. Greg has a predilection to write in all caps. Ignore it. Pretend it's normal writing.
I'm left no choice whatsoever but to demand an immediate review of the Shadow of Colossus PS4 remake.
He's very strident about that.
P.S. In case you already reviewed that game at some point, it's been out in some form for roughly 20 years.
Not 20 years.
Are you allowed to editorialize?
Yeah.
My alternate request is the book Everyone's an Alien, where you're an alien to a book by Johnny Sun. Thank you.
Do you think that's a real thing?
I don't know.
I don't either.
Is it supposed to be alien?
Yeah, because it's alien. There's a stray B put in the word alien. I don't know if that's some sort of a formatting thing or his email put that. I don't know what that is. Yeah. So we're going to take this as a recommendation for Shadow of Colossus, the PS4 remake. All right. Thank you. That was a guest appearance from Christian Mentowski.
It's
all right. My counter recommendation, Greg, and it's not entirely in earnest, but thinking about Shadow of Colossus reminded me of this. There's a middling, and I'm being polite because I haven't played it enough to really be dismissive of it, game called Extinction, where they clearly drew from Shadow of the Colossus, thinking, hey, let's make an action game where you fight. It's like a brawler with a little bit of traversal, and every now and then you have to climb up on a big giant and kill it. It's called Extinction, and I think it's not very good. So it's not much of a counter recommendation. What else did I write here? Oh, you have to build up, man. Yeah, so there you go, Greg. You deserve better. Sorry I couldn't give you better. Shadow of Colossus, does that hold up? I'm skeptical. All right, Greg. Mitchell Erdbrugger. Once again, I request season 1 of the show Patriot on Amazon Prime. All right, hold that thought, Mitchell. Dingus, read one more of these.
Okay, sorry.
Because this one, I so hope this one doesn't get picked.
How do you say that name?
I think it's MiG UK, because MiG is, they make fighters and UK is a country. It could be MIGIC. You make your own call.
I like MIGIC.
Okay.
You're a pretty hip guy.
Yeah, right away. Yeah, he's not serious.
You're plugged into the cool kids lingo. You know all about jungling and lanes and whatnot. I remember jungling and lanes.
No, you don't.
We played League of Legends.
Jeez, all right.
All right.
Wow.
I know one thing about games.
What character did you play in League of Legends?
What's her name?
Come on, you got to remember her name. Don't pretend you don't. Really?
Miss Fortune.
Very good. All right.
She was really great. She was. Your disdain for grandpa movies.
What kind of character was she? Did she carry or did she jungle? Was she a laner?
She was a ranged fighter. I always prefer range because I'm terrible. Your disdain for grandpa movies is well known, so I request from you a review of Millennials.
The generation, the whole.
Oh, it's not a title of something.
No, the people, yeah, like does
so McGuck wants you to, or MIG UK wants you to review a generation.
Yep, because he sort of explains there. Yeah.
All right. I've seen 1,000 terrible think pieces about how they're going to either ruin or save our civilization. I'd like your perspective.
All right, millennials. Do we know any millennials, Dingus?
I don't know what a millennial is.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Yeah, you do. It's people who were born around the millennia. It's people who grew up around the turn of the millennium. They're the people responsible for social media and getting Trump elected and Facebook and all that stuff.
That doesn't count kids.
Yeah, your son's a little bit too young to be a millennial. Yeah, I think there's a gap. We're mercifully free of exposure to most millennials, I think. Yeah. All right. MiG UK, my counter recommendation. Oh, okay. Well, MiG UK, my counter recommendation. Millennials, Vietnam veterans. There's a generation I'd like to review. My father, a guy who, I know a lot of, when I was growing up, a lot of Vietnam veterans, at least people in that generation, were influential to me. So my counter recommendation, MiG UK, look into Vietnam veterans. All right, Mitchell Erdbrugger, who wrote, once again, I request season 1 of the show Patriot on Amazon Prime. Mitchell, there's a show called The Looming Towers. Looming Tower, not to be confused with the towers that it's also about, which is about the investigation into terrorist plots in the U.S. leading up to 9/11, and the friction between the CIA and the FBI. In the form of 2 characters, one from the FBI, one from the CIA, played by Peter Sarsgaard and Jeff Daniels. Looming Tower, I love Looming Tower as a procedural about how we prevented a catastrophic terrorist attack in the United States, except that's not what it's about because that's not what happened, but that's how it's told. Mitchell, Looming Tower is chilling, great stuff. Bill Camp is in it. I love him. There's some intriguing stuff about the relationships of the main characters to women in different ways. Tahir Rahim is a young, is he Lebanese? Is a young actor who I like, and he's great in it. If you want to talk about the portrayal of Islam in popular media, Looming Tower is a good example for this. You know, it's like Murakami wrote about the Tokyo sarin attack. He was less interested in the perpetrators of it and more interested in the people who lived through the incident. Looming Tower was a book that had a similar approach that was less interested in the attackers and more interested in the investigators leading up to the attack. And the TV show takes that approach as well. So Mitchell, there's my counter recommendation. I think to all of you, anybody, just as a new take on 9/11, Looming Tower is a sad look at hindsight being 2020. All right, Bruce Garrick, Paradise of the Blind. I'm sticking with it. Bruce Garrick, I'm just going to recommend to you the best thing that I have seen in 10, 20 years. Bruce Garrick, go online and Google Turbo Killer. It's a 3-4 minute video. It's the best thing I've seen in 20, 25 years. The Turbo Killer video, based on a song, Turbo Killer, by Carpenter Brut. But you got to watch the video. All right, Eric Geithner. Is that the end of that page? Yeah, Eric Geithner. My wife and I are going camping up in Yosemite this spring and couldn't be more excited. We don't camp often, but we do love it. Exploring nature and unplugging from day-to-day life is a great way for us to hit refresh. I'd love to read a review of a camping trip, one that you've already experienced, or, if you're up to it, a new one. Eric Geithner. I mentioned previously camping in Joshua Tree, which is great. So that won't be my counter recommendation. My counter recommendation was going to be camping in the Angeles National Forest, which is a few blocks. Like if you keep going in that direction for a little while, you bump into the Angeles National Forest. I live relatively right up against it. And I was thinking there's got to be great camping there. So I Googled looking up camping. You have to reserve camping, and this just seems so antithetical to what camping should be about. You have to reserve a spot in a camping plot months in advance. Like I was going through looking, Friday, Saturday was taken. Like I think the first one available was some Friday in July, in the weekend in July, where the Saturday was taken. So you have to camp Friday overnight and I guess leave Saturday morning. So forget camping in the Angeles National Forest. Instead, there's a lovely little 4 or 5 mile hike to a waterfall. And it's the Trail Canyon is what it's called. It's a pretty generic name. And assuming there's been enough rain, you go a couple of miles up to it and you come to a really cool waterfall. And then you come back and go on a weekday because there'll be no one there and it'll be lovely. All right, and Eric, boy, Yosemite. I've never been. I know a lot of people who go regularly. They bring back pictures. It looks spectacular. The pictures look fake. Like they look so beautiful. It's like, no, that's a fake postcard. Somebody did that like in Photoshop or something. John Roberdeau, I'll go ahead and make a request. How about Clive Barker's short story, In the Hills, the Cities, from Books of Blood, Volume 1. All right. Here's Paradise of the Blind, which Bruce Garrick recommended. What else do we have? Okay, here we go. I can't believe I hadn't recommended this guy before. Nathan Ballingrud is a horror writer who has, at least in this book, North American Lake Monsters, has a unique approach in some of these stories to horror and about how even more horrifying than horror is irrelevance. That's not quite a good way to put it. At any rate, I like his approach to telling stories. And the one I just reread last night to remind myself, is this worth recommending? It's about a 15-year-old who sees one morning a vampire trying to escape from the sunlight hide under his house. And he goes down there and he has a conversation. He talks to the vampire. And in the first page, he asks the vampire, do you believe in God? And the vampire says, I was raised Baptist. My thoughts on the matter are complicated. Which is a nice little bit of dialogue. Ballingrud describes the vampire as a dancer pretending to be a spider. So he's a really good writer, very nice prose. And the story, I would just recommend the titular story, North American Lake Monsters. So anyway, Nathan Ballingrud, I like this guy a lot. North American Lake Monsters, the title story. There's my counter recommendation, John. I've never read any Clive Barker. Matt Bugby. Haga Hara is an elegant block war game that plays as beautifully as it looks, he says. Man, I look it up. So Matt, I certainly appreciate this review request, but I look at those block games and think that looks kind of silly. That's like, That's like playing with miniatures, but without them being carved yet. It's just like, it's a block of wood. And I know the conceit, like Stratego, you know, you have the block where the guy can't see its strength value, and then you turn it. Is it a 4? Is it a 2? Okay. So Haga Hara also, like I know, you know, what I know about Japanese historical warfare is from the Shogun series. So at least Haga Hara looks like it's on a map of Japan. It's of course the big battle that unified Japan in I think it was like right at 1600, which is super convenient because it's easy to remember when it is. If it had been like 1604 or 1621, I would never have remembered it. But when you know the battle, I might even be getting this wrong. It could be 1599. At any rate, a block war game about that. Matt says it plays as beautifully as it looks. So my counter recommendation was going to be a game that I'm actually going to save the counter recommendation for later because I want to play it some more so that I can fully express my enthusiasm for it. I'm going to quit teasing you guys with that, and I'm going to show you this. So this is a game about painting. And it's arguably like Kanagawa. I don't know what the word actually means. You play painters or the painting students learning from mastery, like your Japanese students studying painting. And it's a beautiful, lovely game. It's basically kind of a set collection thing. It has a nice interactive mechanic, a sort of a push your luck thing, and it's beautiful just the way that it lays out. We all know Tokaido, right? The game about the pilgrimage through Japan. Like Tokaido's a lovely game. It's a little bit glib. It's sort of just like moving and doing a space. And Tokaido is kind of brain dead, which is fine. But Kanagawa actually has some cool gameplay in it. So there's my counter recommendation, Matt. Kanagawa. There we go. Let's now go find a random number generator. All right, I have my doubts about whether this will work. This is a random cat generator. All right, here we go. This is Shadow. He's got, no, wait, hold on, dude. What we're gonna do is see which one of these he eats first. All right, so numbers. This is very cruel to you, isn't it? All right. If he eats this one here, just the way the numbers are on the screen, let's go, I think whichever one I put down first. Really, dude? All right, you know what? I guess we're going to have to go to the dog. Hi there. We're here with the random dog generator. We've got two balls, a yellow one and a pink one. Purple, pink? We'll call it pink. We are now going to place a kibble on either one, and whichever one the dog eats first will determine, it'll be like an elimination round. All right, so the first thing we're going to do, let's say left column here, right column here. So this is First Martians all the way down to Hitman's Bodyguard. Oh, sweetie, not yet. Hold on. All the way down to Hitman's Bodyguard. This kibble here will mean Yakuza 0 all the way down to Haga Hara, according to the random dog generator. Come on, sweetie. Honey, not yet, sweetie. You have to be told you can go eat them. You know the rules. Come here, sweetie. Come here, good girl. No, honey, come. Good dog. Sit. Good girl. Good girl. You want that food? Go get it. All right. That is the left column. That means it's going to be anything between First Martians and Hitman's Bodyguard. I guess now we'll do even numbers versus odd numbers. All right. This one right here, honey, you don't get it yet. Come here, get it, or go. Here, honey, come here, come. Sit. Honey, sit. Stay. All right, these are even numbers. These are odd numbers. Even, odd. Even, pink, odd, yellow. Come. Good dog. Sit. Sit down. Such a sweet dog. Go get it. Go get the food. And it's even. All right. So that means it is between, let's go down the list here, Hyperion, Operational Art of War 4, Impulse, Dead House Gates, it should be Gardens of the Moon, because that's a repeat vote. Not yet, sweetie. Working, Stud's charcoal book. Firefly, some TV show about spaceships. And Hitman's Bodyguard. All right, so let's see how to do this one. Let's say, honey, sweetie. Come here, come here. Honey, come, Did you just eat that? Did you just cheat? All right, stay. All right, I think she did, she totally cheated. All right, that's why this isn't legal for things like state lotteries or scientific research. All right, honey, I told you to stay. You're terrible. Come here, sweetie. Come here. Sit. You know better. Stay. All right, so let's see. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the first 3 of them here. Hyperion, right, pink. Operational Art, Impulse, and Dead House Gates, or Gardens of the Moon. Yellow will be Working, Firefly, and Hitman's Bodyguard. All right. Are you ready? Are you ready? Come on, sweetie. Honey. Come here, you good girl. Ready? Honey. Come. Come. Good dog. Sit. You're such a good dog. Go get it. She ate it, right? All right. Good. It's an even number. It's going to be easier for us, sweetie. All right. So now it is between... All right, honey, come. All right, good girl. Sit. I know you want what's in here. Stay. All right, here we go. This cup is Hyperion and Operational Art of War. This is Impulse and Dead House... sweetie. You're leaving your post. This is Impulse and Dead House Gates or Gardens of the Moon. All right. Ready, sweetie? Come on, honey, come. I know. All right. Come here, you sweet. Honey, Come here, good girl. You're so sweet. Sit down, skinny dog. Sit. Go get it, go. All right. All right, sweetie, come here. I have to reset it. Honey, come. Good girl. Sit. Stay there. Sit. How would you sit? Stay there, sweetie. Stay. All right. Hyperion wins if she eats this kibble. Operational Art of War wins if she eats this kibble. Hyperion, Operational Art of War. Here we go. A Dan Simmons book or a Nerdy Man war game. Let's find out. Honey, come. You are such a good girl. You are such a good dog. Are you ready? You jumped the gun. That's called jumping the gun. You're a classic example of that idiom. Go get it. Go eat one. And it is Hyperion. Random dog number generator has spoken. The winner is Hyperion. Congratulations, Alex Chapman. Thank all of you guys for participating. I hope everyone's having a great month. Thanks for the dog. Oh, let's, there you go. The dog wins. You don't want, there's 3 more left. Do you want them? I'll eat them if you don't. We'll give them to the cat. Thanks, everyone. Cheers.